So as most of you know, compact SUVs are an extremely popular segment here in America. In fact, they're so popular that every manufacturer seems to want to get a slice of this pie with their own version of a compact SUV. So today, I'm here with 8 other journalists where we've gathered 7 of the most popular compact SUVs on the market. Starting on the lineup, let's take a look at the 2018 Toyota Rav4 Adventure. This is a new trim for 2018. This one is stickered for around $34,000. Right behind it, we've got the latest Kia Sportage. This is a 2018 Sportage SX all-wheel drive with the 2-liter turbo. This one is around $36,000, and it has also the biggest tires on it. These are 19-inch wheels. Now, the runt of the pack is the Hyundai Kona. Now, technically, this does not compete in the compact SUV segment. This is a subcompact SUV. It's about a foot shorter than a lot of the other vehicles here, and it's also the cheapest. This one is around $23,000 for the SEL all-wheel drive. Now, this is the one that is actually the most off-road capable. I wouldn't expect less from a Jeep. It's the Cherokee Trailhawk, the refreshed one for 2019. This one is also the most expensive at $41,245. It has a 4-wheel drive system with a low range and the most ground clearance. Now, the biggest vehicle here is actually not an American. It's the Tiguan. This is the all-new 2018 model. It has a 2-liter turbo, 4-wheel drive, just under 8 inches of ground clearance, and this is about the same price as the Jeep at $41,000. Now, the sleekest vehicle here is the 2018 Mazda Cx-5 at around $34,000 in that soul red crystal. It definitely stands out here in the fact that I really don't want to take it off-road because it just doesn't look like it belongs here. And then, of course, last but not least, here is the 2018 Honda Crv Touring. This is one of the top sellers in the segment. It has around 8 inches of ground clearance as well. This one, as equipped, is around $34,000. Now, you're probably noticing there's no Subaru here. It's because Subaru said they didn't want to play for this specific event, which we would have loved to have like a Forester or a Crosstrek. But for this video, we're going to talk about which one of these crossovers is going to be the best one to actually take off the beaten path if you guys are brave enough to do so. So to start off our off-road excursion, I'm in the car that is easily the most capable car of the group. This is the 2019 Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk. It has the most ground clearance at 8.7 inches. It has the only real 4-wheel drive system with a low-range transfer case, and it has a locking rear diff. This trail is a piece of cake for the Cherokee. It's going to be interesting to get into all the other vehicles, which are, again, more designed to be on the actual road. This car is going to make everything feel really easy, while everything else is probably going to struggle. But I'm going to keep an open mind. But starting off in the Cherokee, this is the one that's going to kind of set the standard for me. This one feels the most truck-like out of everything in the group. This car also has an all-terrain tire. These are Firestone Destination ATs, and this is really where you're going to notice the biggest difference with the Cherokee in terms of the traction. I mean, when you have the correct tire, you have a lot of sidewall because these are, 65 series tires, 17-inch wheel. I mean, I can kind of
forgot to mention that you should probably dodge rocks as best you can from hitting the undercarriage, and if there's no way around it, then put your wheel on the...
That was our group leader telling us to avoid all the rocks, which I can technically avoid in the Cherokee because it has all that ground clearance, because I have these all-terrain tires, which makes this car the best choice. I mean, it's a Jeep. You expect it to be off-road capable. It has the trail-rated badge on the fenders, which I'm pretty happy right now to be in the Jeep. I mean, going over, some of these rocks, the mud, there's some terrain or up and down terrain here. This is nothing for this car. It's not even breaking a sweat. And I drove on this trail in the Wrangler earlier this year, back in January, so I'm happy to be out here again at Peters Mill Run. And I have to say, driving the Cherokee, the suspension soaks up the bumps very well. It has good visibility. It's a good size as well. So if you guys are looking for a smaller crossover, this is going to really fit the bill. And I don't even have to do anything. I just put the all-wheel drive system into its automatic mode and just hit the gas and just drive. I mean, of course, I have different modes here. There's a sand, mud mode, there's a rock mode, there's a sport and snow mode, but I'm just going to leave it in automatic because I want to see how the 4-wheel drive system does. You can see up ahead we've got the Hyundai Kona, which has the least amount of ground clearance out of all the cars here at like 6.7 inches. It's probably tied with the Rav4 actually, which is surprising considering that's the adventure grade, which technically has 6.5 inches, so it's a little bit less, but it's trucking along through here. I haven't gone into that car yet, but the Cherokee is seriously making it very easy to get through this type of terrain. Interestingly, the Cherokee Trailhawk does not have a screen in the infotainment or in the information center that shows like off-road information, which you'll find on like a Wrangler or I believe the Grand Cherokee. So it's interesting that Jeep decided to leave that out. Okay, so it's been raining here overnight, and it's pretty muddy. So we're gonna go through this little muddy area here because we're in the Trailhawk. Why not? And as you can see, piece of cake for the Jeep. So moving on to our next vehicle, I've switched over to the 2018 Hyundai Kona. Now, I actually haven't had a chance to drive this car yet, but I'll be sure to do a full review once I actually get one for a long term to test. Out of the entire group, this is probably the one that I would not want to be in the most in this kind of condition, although I'll keep an open mind. It has an all-wheel drive system with a lock function, so it'll split the torque 50-50. It has 6.7 inches of ground clearance, a 17-degree approach angle and 29-degree departure angle. And the one thing about the Kona is this car is a subcompact SUV, so it's a lot smaller than a lot of its competitors. And I immediately noticed that out here on the trail because I can fit through places where the much wider vehicles like the Cherokee, I'd have to kind of squeeze in a little bit more. This car is a lot smaller, so you notice that it's about a foot shorter than most of the cars here and up to a foot and a half shorter than something like the Volkswagen Tiguan. Okay, I'm definitely not in the Jeep. Oh, Jesus. It scraped something. Yep, this is the car that probably nobody who owns this thing would take it in this kind of condition, but we like to test everything and see how they do, because even though you probably won't take it out in this condition, it's kind of cool if you can. I don't know how Alex was going as fast as he did, but this is like the harder part of the trail. And of course I had to move into the Kona where there's some more rocks, and rocks make me nervous. We got these skinny 215 tires with 17-inch wheels. They're street tires. So you have to really be careful around sharp rocks because you can easily puncture a tire.
Okay, come on.
Okay, this thing doesn't have the ground clearance, but the four-wheel drive system is doing a good job with appropriating the power where it needs to go. Okay, it's okay, we're good. We're all good. Made it through those sharp rocks in this little Hyundai Kona. Everyone's like, where did the Kona go? I was like, well, there were some deep rocks over there. I was like, I ain't gonna curve this little Kona. This is my first time driving it, and you stick it into an off-road course for me, okay. So moving down the line of cars today, now I've switched over to the 2018 Kia Sportage. This is a fully loaded SX model with the 2-liter turbo. It's got 19-inch wheels, and honestly, out of every car in the group here, it has the lowest profile tires on 45 series width. So in these kind of conditions, you want to be very careful because when you have this little sidewall protection, you can easily pop a tire on a sharp rock. And this car only has 6.8 inches of ground clearance, although it has a much higher approach angle versus the Kona that I just got out of, which I think it's almost like twice. This is 28 degrees versus 17 in the Kona. So it does make it a little bit better. However, these low profile tires are just not where you'd want to be in this kind of situation. And this is the first time I've scraped it. I scraped the Kona a couple times already today, but the Kia's four-wheel drive system is pretty similar to the Kona's. And one thing I don't like about the Sportage is the visibility is not quite as good as the two other cars I just got out of. The hood makes it very difficult to see where the front of this car is, especially when you're in these kind of conditions. I'm trying to avoid the sharpest rocks possible, of course, and I'm having trouble seeing around, especially when the front kind of goes over some kind of like a hill, a crest. It just makes it difficult to see. But again, most people who own these type of vehicles will probably never take it into this kind of condition, but it's always good to know that you can. I will say that getting out of the $23,000 Kona and hopping into the $36,000 Sportage, the heated steering wheel and heated seats is a nice addition, and it's especially useful on a chilly afternoon like now, where it's like in the 60-degree mark. So now I've switched over to the 2018 Rav4 Adventure, and most of you guys will know this is the last model year of this generation Rav4. The all-new one is coming out at the end of the year, but the Adventure grade is new for 2018, and Toyota kind of did it as just a specialty model as a final hurrah for this generation. And what they essentially did is they gave it a little more ground clearance, give it some special black trim on the outside, a couple of unique badging in here and there. It has like a ½ inch more ground clearance, so it's still only at 6.5 inches, which is actually the lowest ground clearance rating out of all the cars here. But it doesn't have really skinny, low-profile tires like the Sportage I just got out of, so the Rav is still a pretty solid choice. I mean, it feels, compared to the other two cars I just got out of, it feels pretty good out here. I don't feel like I'm going to break something like I did in the Sportage or the Kona, but its four-wheel drive system is pretty good. It has a locking center diff, it looks like, that it's engaged right now, and it has a conventional powertrain, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder with a 6-speed auto, and you actually have really good visibility. Unlike the Sportage, I don't feel like I'm kind of craning my neck to see over things as we go over the rocks, or I'm not really trying to avoid the sharp rocks as much because I don't have big 19-inch wheels on the Sportage, so this one is a little bit more relaxing out on this kind of conditions. Oh shoot. Well, the Kia scraped on something too. Yeah, I heard it scraped too. It's that rock.
Oh, yeah.
It scraped on that rock, which I thought it would clear. Ooh. Well, at least I wasn't the only one that scraped on that rock. Oh my god.
That was
You did it on a different
I think it was on a different one.
I did?
Which he's gonna...
So now we've moved on to the Honda CRV, and honestly, this vehicle is probably one of my favorites. I haven't driven one in almost a year. I mean, this car's been out for almost 2 years now, but it's still a strong player. It's the only group in this, or it's the only vehicle in this group that has a CVT, which is definitely going to hurt it off-road. CVTs don't tend to work well in these kind of situations. This car, of course, as you know, has the 1.5 liter turbo with 190 horsepower. Visibility in this car is strong. I can really see out of it really well, which is great. It has around 7.9 inches of ground clearance, so it's got a good 1.5 inches more than the Rav4, which is definitely going to help it in this kind of situation. Already I'm noticing the CVT is irritating out here because it just doesn't put the power down to the wheels as well as the other cars with their geared transmissions. I have to put my foot down a little bit harder to get it to actually accelerate. Oh goodness, this is nerve-wracking. God, the CVT really does not like this kind of situation. So I definitely noticed this car has a lot more ground clearance versus the Rav4 I just got out of, but the CVT, as you can hear, really has trouble putting the power to all four wheels. You just have to use more throttle. It doesn't kind of give you that immediacy that you get from a stepped transmission, but thankfully the CRV's four-wheel drive system kind of got us up that pretty steep hill. So having nearly 8 inches of ground clearance really helps. I haven't scraped the CRV, and this and the Jeep Cherokee are the only two that I've driven so far, although I haven't driven the Mazda or the Volkswagen yet, that hasn't scraped going through these trails. So we're making our way into the Cx-5. This is the sportiest offering out of all the cars in this group. Although it's not the quickest, for sure. And this one only has 7.5 inches of ground clearance, which makes it kind of mid-pack. But you have a conventional 6-speed auto, which already makes it better than the CRV, and normally aspirated 4-cylinder. But in terms of the visibility, the Mazda is kind of right there in the mid-pack. I can see really well through the front. The hood is nice and low, the mirrors are good, and the seat also moves up nice and high. So this car is smaller on the outside than some of the competitors, and it definitely feels that way when you're driving it in these kind of tough conditions that nobody would drive an SUV like this in. So now we're in the Volkswagen Tiguan, and surprisingly, this one has almost 8 inches of ground clearance. It has some off-road equipment, including these fancy cameras that really show you a 360-degree view, and the camera quality is also pretty good. And of course, this one has a full-time 4-motion all-wheel drive system with a 2-liter turbo. It's got an 8-speed conventional automatic, which is also great. And right off the bat, the Tiguan definitely feels like the biggest car here. It's bigger than the Rav4 and Jeep by like 3 inches, which is pretty significant. It's funny because Volkswagens in the past tend to be the smaller offerings. But just like the Kia Sportage, this also has 19-inch wheels, so one of the bigger tires, but they aren't quite as low profile. These are 50 series tires, so I don't feel like they're gonna pop as I did in the Kia. But the visibility in here is also pretty good. You can see very clearly. The hood doesn't really get in your way like it did in some of the other cars. And you also can make the seat sit up nice and high. But what I like is the camera still is continuing to work even though I'm moving here. Although I believe it'll shut off probably when I start increasing my speeds above 20 miles an hour. But you know, in these conditions, we're not going to go that fast. The parking sensors, however, will get annoying and they will beep at the sight of rocks, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But this is kind of the easier part of the trail. All the heavy rocks are gone, which makes me feel a little bit better. I don't feel so nervous, but I mean, even though these cars will probably never see this type of terrain, you can theoretically do it if you put, you know, decent sized tires on them. You put a lift system or lift kit on the suspension because they really need more ground clearance. But the Tiguan with its near 8 inches definitely helps it keep from scraping. Although the fact that it is bigger, some of the journalists were saying that it scraped a little bit because the rear overhang isn't quite as good. But overall, I'm still pretty impressed with this new Tiguan. The interior is probably the most tech heavy. I mean, it has the Audi virtual cockpit, which Volkswagen calls the digital cockpit. It doesn't feel the most luxurious. That distinction goes to the Mazda, but it feels roomy in here. It feels spacious. It feels premium, which it ought to be because this one is one of the most expensive. It and the Jeep are over $41,000. In terms of the ride quality, I am noticing the Tiguan is bouncier. It's kind of bouncy in the way that the Sportage is or was because of the bigger 19-inch wheels, which is why when you come out off-roading and why off-roaders don't want big wheels and tires because they get in the way when you're driving in these kind of conditions. So as you guys saw, most of the crossovers in this segment will probably never see the kind of stress that we put these vehicles through today on all the different types of terrain. But as you also saw, most of the vehicles can handle it, with the exception of a few that need a little bit more ground clearance. But hey, we only scraped a couple of undercarriages. At least all of the vehicles have made it through in one piece. And we also didn't get any flat tires, or nobody really got stuck. So what's my favorite out here in this type of environment? Well, it's hard for me to pick a winner because obviously I'm going to go to the Jeep. The Jeep is the most off-road capable. It has 8.7 inches of ground clearance. It has a real 4-wheel drive system. It has all-terrain tires on it. So obviously that was my favorite choice out here. However, out on the road, the Jeep definitely falls mid-pack as its 9-speed automatic and 2-liter turbo still didn't really deliver the performance that I was hoping it would deliver. Going down the lineup here, the Kia Sportage was probably my least favorite. I'm still not warming up to the front end design. I don't really like the interior. I think the ride and handling need to be tweaked, and its 2-liter turbo makes considerably less power than the Jeep's, although the car itself doesn't feel very, very quick. The Kona, I'm gonna leave it out of this comparison because it doesn't really compete in this segment. I found out here that it's really small, petite size, really helped it get through the trails, but it's really small ground clearance also, or low ground clearance, also allowed it to scrape a whole lot. The Rav4 Adventure is definitely the grandfather of the group here, although it still does pretty well. It only has 6.5 inches of ground clearance, which curiously is the lowest amount out of everything here, and it definitely scraped a lot as well. The most well-rounded vehicle to me is probably the Honda CRV in this segment. It had a good amount of ground clearance at 8 inches. Its CVT is not likable out here, but on the real world, it's one of the best transmissions and one of the quickest in the segment, and also happens to get the best gas mileage. The Tiguan, of course, is the biggest. It also feels like the most like a minivan at times because of its size, although its interior is pretty nice. I just haven't really warmed over to the styling of it. And then of course, last but not least, the Mazda. That is the best looking vehicle of the group. However, the Cx-5, what it kind of loses ground on is its interior. It's definitely smaller, its cargo area is smaller, but it is the sleekest vehicle of the group. And honestly, you can't go wrong with any of these vehicles. Just know that if you actually plan to do some serious kind of trail off-roading, the Jeep Cherokee is definitely the one you want to go with. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full video on comparing all of the latest compact crossovers in the segment. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.
Joe, we just lost a tire on the Rav4.